So imagine you are trying to build an artificial agent that is conscious in the same way as you and me are. We cannot do this with a physical system, right? A physical system cannot be conscious, apparently. So you would have to simulate it. You have to make it as if, to pretend to be conscious. How would you do this? You need, for instance, to have qualia. Qualia are the features of experience. There are things like colors and sounds and the relationship between them, and surfaces, and the experience of information flowing through space and being hindered there, pressure and lightness and heaviness and so on, right? And valence, something feels good or bad. And good or bad means that it forces you to leave that state or attracts you to that state and so on. And all these dimensions, these feature dimensions, we can of course implement as basically geometrical models that we can compute with formal systems of our choice. So there is technical difficulty in how to get all these computations right, but there is nothing mysterious about how to make a system that behaves as if it would see colors, right? It's going to not just measure the wavelengths, but it's going to generalize the wavelengths in such a way that it normalizes over arbitrary lighting conditions. As for instance, red is something that passes as red under arbitrary lighting conditions on the surface of an object that is red. And that you generalize this over all the red objects, and then you also get the associations to blood and the flag of the working class, and to roses and love and heat, right? All the rednesses are now one step away from this abstraction of red that can be translated as a feature dimension as part of the simulated experience of a virtual system. And so, of course, this experience is not real. There is not really any physical system that experiences anything. It's only being represented as if it was. It's basically like a multimedia story. It's not written in words in a natural language or in a logical language, but it's written in something like a machine learning language. And then this model is being used to drive the behavior of the agent. It's a control model that is being used to inform what the system should learn and how it should interact with the environment. And as a result, it produces new steps, it produces new model contents. And some of these model contents are, for instance, thoughts. These are not real thoughts, these are as if thoughts, which means there are conceptual and linguistic and ideatic and imagined configurations of such features that give rise to the next set of features, to the next set of thoughts and experiences, right? Again, these are virtual, they're not real. Here is, what if the system would feel something? What if there was a person? What if there were social interactions that would matter to the system? What if that would experience red in a way that corresponds to heat and so on, right? So you build all this into the system and you let it drive behavior, including speech and self-reports, and it gives rise to the next set of things. So this system would be indistinguishable from us, right? Because it's also thinking the same things now. It's producing the same thoughts, it's producing the same story. And it would have emotions and experiences, it would experience phenomena for the same reason that a character in a novel experiences it, because it's being written into the novel by the author. In our case, the author is the mind. And I think the answer to the big question, how is it that we can be conscious in the physical universe, is we are not in the physical universe, that we only exist in that story. We only exist in the dream that's written by the mind. So this is the way it works. It's virtual. Consciousness is virtual. And the experience of realness that we have is not the realness of the physical universe, because the physical universe doesn't feel like anything, right? Reality doesn't feel real. What feels real is only the simulacrum. Only a simulation can feel real to a simulacrum. Realness itself, not reality, is a simulated property. Consciousness is a simulated property of a simulated system. A physical system cannot be conscious, only a simulation can be conscious. Outside of the dream, there is nobody.
So we're conscious because we're part of the story that the brain tells itself.
Yes, we only are conscious inside of the story. And we are characters in a story that the brain is telling itself.
Right, now here's where I'm having trouble, because if I write a story, Lord of the Rings, for example, is Frodo Baggins actually feeling something? Or is he just scribbles on a paper? Just because it's a story doesn't mean it has to have experiences associated with it. So why do we?
The question is, what do you mean by is? It has to do with the question of what's being taken as the of reality. I think that reality that cannot be experienced is very unsatisfying, right? It's not the reality that most people would refer to. The experience of reality is something that is virtual. It's the experience of the VR generated by your mind. Right? It's a virtual reality that you inhabit as a non-player character. And the non-player character is generated by the mind as well to describe the interactions of the organism with the world. Right? It's a story about what the organism does in the world. And it's the best story that the mind can come up with. And this story is being used to inform the behavior of the organism. And you cannot break out of the story. That's why the story is real to you. So the thing is to Frodo, his feelings are real in the story. To us, they're not, because we see this from the outside. We see how this thing can be constructed. We can even change the story if we have a pen and paper and can make him feel something different. But to Frodo himself, it doesn't make sense that his feelings are real to him unless we write into the story that they suddenly don't feel real to him anymore. Right?
Give me a scenario where you can write and make a conscious being from your writing of a story. Do you just write, Frodo now feels so-and-so, and then Frodo actually does feel so-and-so?
So it doesn't work with natural language. You have to use a functional language that is basically not just giving rise to a description of what Frodo is doing, but you need to have a functional implementation of an agent in an environment. Right, so you need to have something like a representation of Middle-earth, and you need to have a control agent inside of Middle-earth that is being controlled by Frodo's self. And Frodo's self is a model of what Frodo is. And it's a model of basically the affordances of that agent and the state of that agent that is driven by that control model. And so this control model is going to contain thoughts that are the result of Frodo's interaction with Frodo's environment, and these thoughts, when Frodo is implemented properly, will reflect on the needs that this agent has. And the needs are in the agent because they're being programmed into it. Right? It behaves according to these needs, and if the model is adequate and is conforming to those needs, then this model is representing pleasure and pain in such a way that Frodo would describe them similar to the way that we would describe pleasure and pain. And he would describe them as his thoughts because that's the best implementation of its control model that Frodo's mind can come up with. So the language that is being used is not a natural language, is not English words or something. It's a functional language. It's a programming language in a way.
So can you then take that and simulate a small consciousness?
I think that we can. But if the agent is too small, it's very difficult to ascribe an interesting type of consciousness to it. And the biggest difficulty is if you have a conscious system that is not able to attend to anything meaningful that we can relate to. How can we say that it attends to anything? And in a way, the biggest unsolved problem of artificial intelligence is not consciousness, it's understanding. And understanding means that we map everything that we perceive onto a unified model of the universe. More or less unified, but it's we basically explain something by creating a relationship to a unified meaning, and the unified meaning is our model of the world. And everything that we perceive, we are able to integrate into this model of the world, and this is something that our AI systems are so far incapable of doing.
Is understanding predicated on consciousness, or do we not need consciousness for understanding?
It depends a little bit on how we would define understanding. So to understand something it's often seen as a verb. That means there is a relationship between the one who understands it and the thing that is being understood, which means you have to have a self-concept and a system that can attend. And the self-concept needs to have a representation of the fact that it's currently attending and what's in the focus of attention. And I think if the question of whether a system is conscious comes down to the question of whether it has a functional model of what it's attending to and the fact that it's attending to it. Right? So you have to have these two aspects. There's contents of attention and the fact that you are currently aware of them using this attentional process. Once you have that, I think it makes sense to ascribe consciousness to the system.